nervous of the stock markets, and I think following the US election, I think there is a real chance that some of these very highly priced tech stocks might be at the highest they'll be for some time.
Inflation is coming back.
Well, at the moment, what governments are trying to do is to avoid a deflationary downward spiral. But I can't help thinking longer term that one of the lessons that we learned in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s was that inflation is a disease of money created by governments. And I think the amount of false money printing at some point is going to lead to inflation, yes.
I'm going to take that as a true then.
Yeah. Sorry. These aren't one-word answers, I apologise.
At least they're interesting, though. The interest rates that we've got should be higher.
Yes, of course, and the whole idea that low interest rates was somehow going to generate this sort of wonderful economic recovery has been a disaster and has further damaged that culture of thrift that I talked about earlier.
I've noticed, I'm going to sway from my true and false game myself, I've noticed in Germany this low interest rates problem is a massive topic that the media loves to discuss, whereas in the UK they never really mention that people are hurt badly when interest rates are cut.
No, it's a funny one, isn't it? Our whole media and business culture is there to talk about borrowers, never about savers. Never. They don't have a voice. There's no effective lobby for them in Westminster. They don't have a voice. But hey, we're talking on behalf of savers here.
The COVID-19 shock is not over yet.
Sadly, that's true.
Buy gold?
Absolutely. It's had a big ride already. I'm very much a buy on dips man with gold, yeah.
Well, here's the twist then. Buy gold ETFs.
Yeah, look, however you do it, I mean, you've got two choices, but I just think the safest, most sensible thing to do is to actually buy physical gold and to know that you've actually got it, because without getting conspiratorial, there are an awful lot of people who think they're buying gold, and I'm not even sure the stuff actually exists. So I think you've got to buy gold, buy the bullion. Yes, sure, you'll pay a bit of rent to hold it, but actually know you have it.
Britain will boom after Brexit.
Britain should boom after Brexit, provided we get out on the 31st of December this year with a deal that makes us free of the clogging rules of the single market, of the customs union, wake up to the fact that we can become more competitive, recognise that Europe is not the be-all and end-all. The Eurozone is 15% of global GDP, there's 85% outside, and hey, you know what? We speak English, the world's language. We've got amazing connections all over the globe. And I tell you what, in relative terms, the UK will do better than the EU over the next few years. Of that, I'm absolutely certain.
The euro will fail.
Ultimately, the euro cannot stay together as it's currently constructed, and there are going to be some pretty hefty casualties along the way.
Including the financial establishment in the UK to some extent.
Well, yes. I mean, I think, as and when this thing does break up, and we'll talk about concepts like Target 2, not today, but these are the kind of things, that we'll use Fortune and Freedom for, to explain to people the real mess the Eurozone is in. I suspect we'll finish up with effectively a greater Deutschmark. We'll finish up with Germany and a few countries around it, but the collateral damage and the risk of being invested in Europe when this happens is very high indeed.
Going back to the Deutschmark zone would of course be what happened historically. The euro is not the first time they've tried this project, so...
Well, I mean, actually, and again, that's something that we could explore, is to go through the history of currency unions. It's a pretty miserable history.
I see it. Those who try and create a currency union in Europe are just repeting history and that quote about doomed to repeat.
It always goes wrong.
Italy will be the next country to leave the EU.
Well, of course, I've always asked this question, to which my answer always is, if I knew the answer, I'd be down at the bookmakers this afternoon. Look, it could well be Italy. It could be Denmark. I mean, Denmark were reluctant joiners of the project. They joined the same day that we did back in '73. They've opted out of even more things than the UK did as members of it, so it could be Denmark. A lot depends on how the UK is seen to be prospering in 18 months' time or so. But I think the country that has the really explosive potential is Italy, and there are two reasons for that. One is that clearly the economics of this currency does not work for Italy. And secondly, the Italians have no emotional attachment to the project. You know, we can go into France and Germany now and talk to people who are quite Eurosceptic, don't like the sort of Brussels bureaucracy, but they'll say, but you know what, Nigel? We had these horrendous wars, 1870, 1914, 1939, 3 wars within 70 years along that border of the River Rhine. And you know, even though we don't like it, you know, at least there's peace. And still, I mean, I think it's an outdated view, but you'll still find an emotional attachment in parts of France and Germany to that view. Italy has no such connection with that history whatsoever. So the Italians have never had any love for the European project. It was just a view in Italy that they were managing themselves so awfully that perhaps somebody else could do it better.
I think that's the dirty little secret of the EU is there's some nations who don't trust their own national politicians or trust the European politicians a little bit more. But that's not true of the UK, and it's not true of Denmark, for example.
And this is what was so amazing, that every time I had a debate against prominent Remainers, the Lord Heseltines, these people, all they could ever do is to tell us that the UK is a tiny little island, we're a poor little country, we can't possibly cope on our own. And it was the mindset of those that are pro-Brussels is that individual nation states cannot flourish in the 21st century. And I actually say, look around the world, look at the Switzerlands, New Zealand, Singapore's, lots of countries around the world with small populations that are well run, that have done incredibly well. So it's self-confidence. I mean, my Euroscepticism was based on self-confidence. I believe that we could actually run things better ourselves. I also think democracy in the long run gives us better outcomes than state socialism run from the centre. And I want to try and apply that principle, and I'm going to try hard to apply that principle with Fortune and Freedom. I think we can do better managing our own money than allowing an industry that acts in its own interest to do it for us.
I'm going to stick to my true and false. I've got 2 more for you.
Oh, sorry.
The European Parliament building will be converted back into a brewery within your lifetime.
Well, I'd like to go. I mean, I'd cut the ribbon on it. If that's what it was.
I was going to ask you if you'd go, actually.
Look, I want us to have a forum where countries in Europe sit down and talk and agree, to do things, common things where we have a shared interest, and that can be air pollution, it can be crime. All of those things we want to do as good European neighbours. We don't need a European Commission and a European Parliament to do those things. We really don't.
So where to now? What's your message for people who've just subscribed or are considering subscribing? What should they do?
I would say this to you. I mean, look, if it's not your bag, if you're not interested, if you trust the industry to look after your money, well, that's absolutely fine. And it's not my job to try and persuade you differently. But if, like me, you're one of those people who feels he's been very badly let down by the industry, then give Fortune and Freedom a chance. You will get a daily newsletter. I hope it'll contain interesting stuff, it'll contain gossipy stuff, it'll contain predictive stuff, but it will also contain educational stuff, stuff about what you can do with your money, how you can do it, that nobody else is ever going to tell you. So your choice. It's a free country, it's a free world, where it should be. But here's an opportunity where I do think you'll find it interesting, and you might just...
We will make America great again.